Okay, this is just kind of rudimentarily just deranged or hilarious. It's not really laugh out loud funny, but it just sorry, I do cardio. It just yeah, it just kind of gets worse every day once you kind of look into this stuff. So I got Isaac Newton, Leibniz-Newton controversy, speed of light, cosmological constant, Rene Descartes, and so obviously I knew Isaac Newton, I knew Rene Descartes. You learn about Rene Descartes very briefly. I want to say in high school, and you just know he's like, well, one of the first philosophers out of Egypt or out of Greece, and yeah, he doesn't really give you much according to his Wikipedia. He is, and this is all according to Wikipedia, but according to Wikipedia, Rene Descartes was influenced by God. Um, the problem that I have with Newton is just he was raised religious, and then also that he is raised basically during the slave trade, and unfortunately, I have to bring that up again just because it is a very crude idea that Newton would have any separation from this whole ordeal. Like, was he one of the people that was risking his life by denying God? No, I would not say it was. Obviously, he's a part of the Whigs, which obviously Leibniz was too. But again, this is going on when the slave trade is happening, so it's just completely insane. Great Britain between the 1680s and the 1850s, uh, they merged to the Liberal Party. So yeah, they could have been more against the Whigs. Could have been more against actual slave trading, but either way, that's what was going on. I don't think he was risking his life by denying God. And if you actually look into this, it eventually says that well, maybe I can go to the religious part. Maybe his legacy or religious views. Go to theology. He had moved away from his Anglican family or former beliefs, and then he became an anti-Trinitarian. Okay, now Leibniz was a Trinitarian, so yes, they were in direct opposition in terms of their religious views. It's just my problem is that he is anti Trinitarian. It's basically saying, I mean, somewhere in here it says that his vows were to never pray to a to a uniform God or to a infinite God or to an almighty God or to the one true God or whatever. Um, so that just tells me that if he had to take vows, where is it? I don't know. It's maybe you'll have to trust me on that. But taking vows to never pray to the one true God. Okay, that's great, but it still, I guess, isn't relative in terms of what was going on. Um, I mean, it definitely could be relative, but I'm just saying, in terms of his physics, it's just relative because, well, Newton could possibly arguing against having infinite uh, correlations in the universe, and it seems like that's what Leibniz's math was doing. Leibniz's calculus was to give infinite correlations in the universe. Now, again, enlightened by people like Locke and Voltaire, who are known religious people. And again, this is just going to take place in the slave trade, and he's a Whig. So, and it looks like Leibniz is in uh, Leibniz is in the Whig party too. So I'm just saying, what's the difference between Isaac Newton saying, "I pray to never pray to God again," and Leibniz saying, "God is the greatest," when obviously Leibniz is probably owning slaves, or I mean, these people are just part of the slave trade. So how can you take their holy word of God seriously? It's like Thomas Jefferson saying, "Well, yeah, this whole thing is a racket, and I don't want to get rid of slaves, but it's probably a better idea to keep them." I mean, so what does it matter what their religious beliefs are? Because their religious beliefs are just racist, socioeconomic um, upbringings, really, and they're nothing more. I mean, it says Descartes was pretty much all over that holy God theory, and yeah. And again, these weren't, it's not a holy God theory. It's a holy God. Um, it's basically a holy God, whatever, proposition or something. I don't know. I don't really know what to call it right now. But yeah, obviously, um, Leibniz's physics opened up kinetic energy. He had this new theory of motion, and disagreeing with Descartes and Newton. I don't know what you can agree with Descartes on. I guess Descartes was talking about gravitation. And again, I mean, if somebody's talking about an infinite number of correlations in the universe, then yes, they are talking about um, expanding their theory to that level. And so I just don't see how else it could have gone any other way. Like, we're supposed to live in some fucking ancient Greece. Are we supposed to live in some ancient Greece, or are we supposed to live in some 21st century? I don't know. I don't really give a fuck at this point, because we fucking suck. Um, I guess I'll take living in a general relative infinite space with no absolute answer other than bullshit speed of light theory and stuff like this, where they're just trying to shelf life the universe, and like, through light or through a light equation, and I use it as a cosmological constant, of course, because there's gravitational forces, or waves that they like to call them, and they just can't label, they can't put a name to the refraction in the universe, and so they say it's an uncertainty. They use the uncertainty principle for that refraction in the universe. They don't hold, they can't tie anything to the gravitational magnetism, so they just use that. And the uncertainty principle, and then they have all these other constants. I think there's 5 constants I heard, and those constants calculate uh, whatever the derivative of the distance that they need to incorporate into their whatever, into their math, and they can call that the speed of light. So it's just, I don't really, I think the whole thing is fucked. If you go with Isaac Newton, if you go with Newton, you can't really say, well, the gravity holds up because yeah, you just have really systemic uh, geometry and algebra. I mean, I guess you have calculus in terms of he was calculating some gravity between planets and stuff like that, but they aren't real. They aren't. They're obviously not real calculus problems. I don't really care if Newton was an anti-Trinitarian. I mean, that's absolute bullshit. I mean, good for him, really good for him. But just because he joined some white man's club doesn't really mean shit to me. Uh, what's this even say? God Almighty wants to wind up his watch from time to time, otherwise it would cease to move. He had not, it seems, sufficient foresight to make it a perpetual motion. Yeah, so it's all a load of shit. I mean, if you're going for calculus that isn't going to be uh, infinite, like use exponents, I'm pretty sure that's all Leibniz did was use exponents. So, I mean, we're talking about that small difference. I mean, it would have, I mean, if you go back in time, nobody would have listened to Newton's theory because Newton's theory was boring. It was simple. It didn't make any universal sense. I mean, he created universal gravity, but nobody knows what the gravity is doing, or it's just two momentums instead of two motions. Again, if they're two momentums instead of two motions, then they don't really have a beginning. I think that's what Newton's Greek physics was more doing. It was saying, well, nothing has a beginning, uh, possibly nothing has an end. But anyway, yes, the celestial mechanics just, well, you can't, I mean, it's going to take you so long to calculate all these other planetary motions or calculate anything. So it was just, I'd say, time for an evolution, time for the whole Trinitarian church to fall, to plunder, and all of that. Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about these guys. They all got metaphysical syllabuses and superlatives, I guess. And if you're going to label gravity, if you're going to give gravity magnetism and polarity, then it's already a sort of magical thinking. Excuse me, I do cardio. So yeah, it's just a bunch of, I don't know. You can't really say that it's that important. I mean, that anybody could have done better. It's just kind of pathetic. I mean, I can't let this piss me off just because, yeah, they're just. I mean, this is like George Washington. This could have been George Washington, and or Leibniz could have been uh, Benjamin Franklin. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. They were just rich white honkies. Not saying Newton was completely privileged, but he was obviously a Whig. He probably got a lot of notoriety through his work because he did seem a little bit poor, but it just doesn't make a difference. I mean, just the man's character isn't shouldn't be the judge of the results. I mean, the you know Leibniz could have been an anti-Trinitarian, and it wouldn't have made a difference. He just wouldn't have been saying, "Oh well, it's important for God. It's important for God. It's important for God." Who cares? He was saying that because he's a Whig and he's a privileged white person during the slave trade. in the 1600s. I mean, it's a fucking joke. Get real. Um, yeah, this bullshit apple tree. Um, I really don't think it's all that important. Just like reading and stuff. I don't think reading and stuff during the age of the internet is all that important. When the internet dies out, yeah, I have a library of books to vacuum up. But yeah, um, this is just degeneracy. I mean, it's not degeneracy really going from Newton to Einstein, but I'm just saying anything past Einstein is just degeneracy. And I don't even think the speed of light was invented by Einstein. If it was, I'll thoroughly take that back. But just talking about these perturbations and electromagnetic radiation and massless particles and how does the refraction happen, or how does the how does the gravitational refraction between atoms happen? Um, Again, it's going to be superiorly theoretical. They're not going to be able to calculate it. Um, and if it is artistic, then it's not going to have it's not going to have a full representation of the atoms. So there's always going to be a problem. Like, if if one photonic particle or one photonic ray uh, is a beam, then yeah, it's going to have a different um, animation in every charge that it has. So there'll be a charge from the sun, there'll be a charge from light bulbs in that sense. Um, and you could be talking about a photoelectric effect where uh, the electrons are given off, or the protons, and they're all running a stream of light, and those electrons and protons, or vice versa, stream off in their polarized spectrums, and that's what is causing the light. And they're moving along the light, but it's just an animation, and it's not good. It's not good for mathematics, and mathematics is the only thing that matters. And um, quantum mechanics, so E equals mc squared, was saying that you can't put a number on that photonic frequency, but you can understand that it is basically, in my eyes, um, Einstein was saying that it's just a refractive principle. Like gravity is just a refractive principle. You can't animate it, and you can't mathematically sequence it, but it is there, and we have to trust that it's there. And if the apple is falling from the tree, you have to know that there's gravity. Okay, that there is gravity, and that there is exceeding pressure and magnetism happening between um, those two objects. Okay, but you have to also understand that there is another force in the universe. It's almost like saying that there is a second force. Like there is the force, basically, of gravity, which you could call momentum, but then energy. Talking about that, there is also another force, whether it's refraction of photonic light, or if you're calling the polarity, whatever, free energy you want to call it, you just have to understand that it's there. I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with my fucking throat. And yeah, so they have all these, all this is bullshit. I mean, there's no other real way to understand guess, an infinite universe. But if you want to say the universe is not infinite, it just kind of becomes bullshit. Because what are you talking about then? Obviously, you're talking about philosophy. If you're talking about atoms consistent in everyone and everything, but if you're giving intellectual properties, or I should say, intellectual mechanisms to gravity and to gravity consists of, because obviously there can't just be gravity, because there needs to be properties. There needs to be chemical bonds and things like that. And I'd say that those chemical bonds, although they can exist without, theoretically, they can exist without magnetism. Well, I guess not. They really can't. Theoretically, they have to exist with magnetism and with, you could say you could say electromagnetism, or you could say photonic energy, or what have you. But they're going to have to exist with those fundamentals in our frame of reference today. So it's not going to make a difference. You're just adding an addition to Newton's polarization, and again, there's no effect to adding those. What am I trying to say? There's no effect to trying to animate Newton's gravity because it doesn't have chemical properties. Let's say there's no speed of light. There's no speed of light. Cosmological constant is just uh, the refraction principle. It's not all this Big Bang shit. It's really not. I think Einstein was fucked over, but there's no vacuum or anything like that. You just have to understand. Well, there's something happening in the polarization or in the momentum, because there has to be. Because if you're, well, I mean, if you want to say, okay, today we're gonna describe gravity. Tomorrow we're gonna describe uh, energy. I don't really know how that would work. Obviously, I'm just saying there's it just to me I don't know how you can miss that there's no loose ends in cosmological constant or E equals mc squared, where there is just a refraction or a reflection principle, even in the photoelectric effect, like I described earlier in past videos. But yeah, if you just have if you just have Newton's gravity, uh, I mean, I'm just saying you don't really have anything to go with it. You don't really have anywhere to go with it. I'm not saying it was for the better that Leibniz and Einstein uh, added to Descartes and Newton, but I'm saying it was kind of uh, principally bound to happen if you're trying to describe the physical universe. Um, so it's just the speed of light is not the speed of light. The speed of light can be the speed of atoms because you can make make it up as you go. But I'm just saying this is how the speed of light is how they are using 15 billion year old universe um, to their pockets or whatever. I mean, it's just complete bullshit. How can you say that the universe is 15 billion years old? 15 billion light years in the past. I mean, that's a fucking really bad religion. So, yeah, I think I covered pretty much what I wanted to cover. I mean, obviously, You're not supposed to see the quantum gravity happening. Quantum gravity, or the quantum mechanics, it's quantum mechanics because it's happening inside of Newton's gravity. It's happening inside of Newton's gravity, and inside of Newton's gravity is where the quantum mechanics is happening. So that's how they've created a racket out of it. And Einstein obviously proved through calculus, I suppose, if you want to call it calculus, that something was happening internally in the gravity. So gravity is pulling this tree down through magnetism and polarization. But all you have to say, you don't have to say that there's an anti gravity happening. You just have to talk about photons, pretty much. You just have to talk about the photoelectric effect inside of this quasi gravity happening. And again, you get a super momentum, like a second momentum, because now you understand radioactive decay or whatever it is. So I can see why they'd want to keep anti-gravity out of the conversation. But yeah, it was just an inevitable. It's not a good science. It's a science that wants to be everything. And it's bullshit. Well, it's bullshit that it has to be everything. I guess it's interesting because yes, it has to be everything. So the anti-gravity and all that stuff doesn't matter. I mean, this whole ether bullshit is not being able to realize like a photoelectric effect in the sky. Nobody thinks of ether. I mean, all these ether people just think, oh, look, the stars are so close. I mean, if you're in Africa and you see a night sky, like the stars would just be lit up. If you're in like a tribe in Africa, the stars would just be lit the fuck up. The whole sky would just be lit the fuck up with stars. And they could just say, oh, the stars are so close. If they have no knowledge of the stars, if they've never, passed third grade, then yeah, they're probably going to think that the stars are just like their buddies or something, that they're so close, but the stars are billions and billions of miles away, trillions and trillions of miles away, or whatever. Light years, whatever bullshit. Light years is not a real fucking word. There's just nothing happening at the speed of light. I mean, don't you think if they could figure out the speed of light, they could figure out the spin of atoms and all this shit that they can't figure out. They can't figure out anything with atoms. They're just figuring out what's happening in the photons. They're figuring out what's happening to the photons, I should say. But they're labeling it. Oh, well, the atoms are doing all this refraction and diffraction. But anyway, you could just say that this is a photoelectric effect. When the sun is reflecting off of the earth, the sky is blue, therefore. And when the sun is not reflecting off of the earth, the sky is not blue. The sky is black like space. The sun still shines through because it is a powerful photonic force and it is not diverged by the sky's reflection, something like that. But so yeah, I don't think that Newton's mathematics could have answered every problem that we needed to answer to be able to get out of like the slave trade, for example. So yeah, I'm just it's not anti-gravity. You could call it the ether. I mean, it's fucking pathetic to call it the ether because you're just not trying to figure out the sky. I mean, for Leibniz's, you know, to side with Leibniz or whatever for a second. I mean, he did call it kinetic energy or potential energy or emotion or dynamic. I mean, it's not some insanely religious shit. Again, I think this guy was just religious by deed because he was white and he was a Whig. I mean, he was a Trinitarian and Newton was a anti-Trinitarian. I mean, wow. Like they fucking went to the same club or whatever. Oh, yeah, and then the feud. I didn't really see anything translated too much in the feud, other than just Leibniz was a piece of shit plagiarizer. But I mean, it doesn't prove anything for Newton. I mean, the argument's not between Newton and it's not between Newton and Leibniz. It's between Newton and Einstein, and I would assume that you have to understand why Newton. Sorry, I would assume that you have to understand why Einstein is wrong.